Algebra 2 CST released, I'm going to go from 71 all the way through 76. And a lot of these are very similar types of questions. In 71, if x is a real number, for what values of x is the equation 3x minus 9 over 3 equal to 3x minus 3 true? A lot of these, what you're trying to do is find not necessarily how many are true, but what would make it false. You're trying to find some number that would make this fraction undefined. The only way to make the fraction undefined is if you have a 0 on the bottom. So a lot of times these problems will have something like x plus 2 on the bottom, where if you put a negative 2 in there, it becomes 0, then unhappiness, it's undefined, you don't want that. But this one, because it's a 3, there's no variable there, that means this 3 is never going to change. It's always going to be 3 on that denominator. That means all values of x will work, because there's nothing that will make this undefined. So keeping that as same idea, if we look at 72, on a recent test, Jeremy wrote the equation, he's got this big long equation. Which of the following statements is correct about the equation he wrote? Now we're starting to think, well, I've got this x minus 4 on the bottom, something's going to make it undefined. If I put a 4 in there for x, that becomes 4 minus 4, which gives me a 0 in the denominator. That makes it undefined, so we don't want x to be 4. So for part A, it says the equation is always true. Nope, because if it's a 4, it doesn't work. Part choice B, the equation is always true except when x equals 4. That means that if we have the 4 in there, it's undefined. That is most likely going to be our answer. Part C, the equation is never true. Well, again, there's only one time when it's not true, which is the 4. The equation is sometimes true, and that's a big difference here. It says always or sometimes. Always is the one we want because the only time it doesn't work is when x is 4. So every other number, always, other than 4, that's when it's going to happen. So our choice for 72 should be B. 73, given the equation y equals x to the n, where x is greater than 0 and n is less than 0. And we'll say it is valid for real values of y. What they're saying here is if n is less than 0, so first I'm going to choose a number for x greater than 0, let's say a 3. If n is less than 0, that means it's a negative value. So let's say negative 2. Which statement is valid for real values of y? When we have that negative x, remember it's going to be flipped over. We have to do the reciprocal, which is going to be 3 over 1 over 3 squared, which would give us a fraction 1/9. So if we look at our answers, it says y is greater than 0. Well, that is positive. It's going to be positive. Y is equal to 0. There's nothing I can put in here that would make this work out to be 0, so that's not it. Y is less than 0. In both of these, C and D, you have y being less than 0. There's nothing I can put in here that would make this a negative answer, which means our answer's got to be A. 74. If x is a real number, what best describes the values of x for which the inequality square root of x is greater than 0 is true. So what we want is all the numbers that will put in here, you can take the square root of, and you get something bigger than 0. Here it says all x greater than 0, all x greater than or equal to 0, all values of x, no values of x. Now the only trick is not all values of x will work, because if you put a negative in there, you can't take the square root of a negative. So that's not going to be it. No values of x. Well, I know some values of x do have a square root. We can take the square roots of the positives. So here, the difference is that one's all greater than 0, one's all greater than or equal to 0. A is our answer because if here it says or equal to, if I put a 0 there, the square root of 0 is 0, which is true, 0 is greater than 0, so that works. So 74, our answer is A. 2 more in this video. 75. Which of the following conclusions is true about the statement below? X squared equals the square root of x. The statement is always true? Nope. If I put in negative 1, negative 1 squared is 1. But this is, if you want to do the imaginary numbers, you can, but it's not going to be the same as positive 1. So that doesn't work. The statement is true when x is negative. Well, I just put a negative in there, so that's not right. The statement is true when x equals 0. 0 squared equals the square root of 0. That does work. And then the statement is never true. Well, we just found that worked, which was C. The last one, number 76, for this video anyway. If x is a real number, for what values of x is the equation log base 5 of 5 to the x equal to x true? All they're looking to see that you know is the fact that when you have the log base of 5 with this 5, when these match, these are going to cancel. So these are with x equals x, which means that this is going to be true for all values of x. Since that rule works, 76, our answer is A.